Hello and welcome to another Magic the Gathering video. Although doing something a bit unusual this time. Christmas is very interesting in terms of Magic. There's always seems to be a bit of a larger gap between sets. So we've had Theros, and then you get quite a large gap between that and what will be Born of the Gods. And although we're seeing pretty much almost like a Magic product every month, I think now. It does always seem that Christmas, that gap over the Christmas holidays, there's always sort of, it seems longer. And I know we've had, the holiday gift box, and I think just before that would have been the Commander product. So what I often do when there's gaps like this, and because the channel revolves around unboxings really, is I try and sort of go through a few things that I have knocking around. I don't have much stuff that's just on the shelf in my office, but I do keep back a few things that I've just picked up over the years. And so what I thought I'd do is open up an Archenemy pack. So Archenemy came out in 2010. It came out just before they were going to put out the 2011 core set, and I know that's always confusing for people new to Magic, where the core sets are now labelled by sort of 1 year on from when they're actually released, and I think that's obviously just a marketing thing. But so what would have happened is 2011 would have been released in 2010 and would have been standard legal until the following month. That's the same month in 2011. So what they did with this product is one of the cards in here was effectively a what would you call it? A preview card for the 2011 core set. And that's one of many interesting things I find about Archenemy. So what you've got to bear in mind, 2010, there was no Commander product then. That didn't come out till, I think, the following year. And but EDH, as Commander was called, was very popular, but there wasn't really any product, and a lot of people were probably having trouble. Although I'm not an EDH player myself, Commander player, and I've sort of dabbled, but I don't play a lot of it. I can imagine at the time there was a problem with people getting what would be called staples, and just if you're new to it, just working out what you wanted to do, what sort of deck you wanted to build. And the Archenemy product was designed to be a certain thing, in that it was designed to be a one against many product. So in here you have a 60 card Archenemy deck, you have a set of 20 Archenemy scheme cards which are synergistic with the deck, and you go up against many other players who are fighting against you. So what happens is the scheme cards give you certain advantage because you are playing against multiple players. And what we'll do is we'll open this up, but what I think is interesting to note is the fact that that there are sort of certain nods in the deck to what would have ended up being a later release of a Commander product. I had looked online and did notice that when this came out, several people, I think it suggested that people almost use this, because there were 4 of these decks, use these 4 decks almost like a EDH toolkit. So Wizards had released the Deck Builders Toolkit, and as I said, people were looking for sort of something that would help them get into EDH, as it was called then. And yeah, if you've gone out and bought all 4 of these decks, and you'll sort of see why in a moment they might be biased towards a singleton style of play, where you play 1 copy of each of the cards apart from basic lands. Why this might suit someone that was maybe looking to get into multiplayer and specifically Commander EDH, but at the same time being a product in itself, being, you know, part of the whole this sort of EDH Archenemy concept. So let's just have a quick look at the scheme card. So when you're assembling a scheme deck, and obviously the idea was that there were other schemes in the other sets, and you could actually put other stuff in here. There were some, I think, released after the product, which allowed you to you know, augment and swap out here. So we have Rotted Ones Lay Siege. There should only be a maximum of 2 of any one of the scheme cards in this as well, of the 20. So I just give you an idea. I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but just give you an idea of what a scheme is. So on this one it says, when you set this scheme in motion, for each opponent put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield that attacks that player each combat if able. And these scheme cards sort of came into action, or set into motion, I suppose is the correct term, at a certain point in the turn, and we'll have a look at the insert and see when that was. Another one here, choose your champion. When you set this scheme in motion, target opponent chooses a player. Until your next turn, only you and the chosen player can cast spells or attack with creatures. And so it goes on. You've got Dance, Pathetic Marionette. The Dead Shall Serve. 2 of those. A Display of My Dark Power. Every Hope Shall Vanish. 2 of those. I Delight in Your Convulsions. Introductions are in order. Mortal Flesh is Weak. Your Fate is Thrice Sealed. Only Blood Ends Your Nightmares. 2 of those. Realms Befitting My Majesty. Your Puny Minds Cannot Fathom. Rotted Ones Lay Siege. Surrender Your Thoughts. My Undead Horde Awakens. And there was Choose Your Champion. Let's just look back at one more. It's My Undead Horde Awakens. So this is what's called an ongoing scheme. An ongoing scheme remains face up until it's abandoned. At the beginning of your end step, you may put target creature cards from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. When a creature you put onto the battlefield with this scheme is put into a graveyard, abandon this scheme. So that's the scheme part of the pack. Now we move on to the actual deck itself. So this is a 60 card deck, along with the appropriate inserts. Now what I'm looking for in here is there should be the obligatory how to play guide, which is probably this one, which has your basic, you know, this is how you play Magic. Yeah. And then we have actually the, let me just zoom out a little bit. We actually have the Archenemy specific. So this looks like, yeah, this lists all the decks that were available, and as I mentioned, there were 4. So here's our deck list of what's available. So there's our scheme list and our actual 60 card deck list. Now one thing you will notice, and this is one sort of nod to EDH, is there are an awful lot of single copies of stuff. So another way in which this may have been, people may have modified this at the time to allow them an easy way to get into playing EDH Commander. And then it stars the preview card as well from the 2011 set, and also lists all the rares. Yeah, Reassembling Skeleton was from 2011. So this is actually a graveyard based deck, and this is very shiny, so I'm having trouble seeing what's on there. I don't know how this is coming out on the camera. That's probably good there. So what you're doing is basically part of what's going on here is putting creature cards into your graveyard. So while they're coming in, you know, obviously through combat and interaction with your opponent, there could be certain cards in here which will allow you to just put stuff into the graveyard and then get stuff out. So not surprisingly, a lot of the schemes obviously interact with that sort of graveyard-based synergies and interactions that are going on. And it does list down the bottom some schemes that work particularly well with this. But you would expect, of course, all the schemes to interact well with this deck, otherwise it would be pretty pointless. Open up the actual deck, see what we've got. So we're playing in red-black, so this would be what, Rakdos colours, if we're using that scheme for naming colour combinations. So we have Bituminous Blast, so this is an instant which deals 4 damage to target creature, but it also has the Cascade keyword on it. So when you cast this spell, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card that costs less. You may cast it without paying its mana cost. Put the exiled cards on the bottom in any random order. So that's on the bottom of your library. Incremental Blight. So this is, you're basically playing around here with -1/-1 counters, where you put 1 on one target creature, 2 -1/-1s on another, and 3 -1/-1s on a third. That's for 3 and 2 black. So what we're starting off here is really with the sort of non-creature support cards. We've got a Beacon of Unrest, and again what's happening here is cards are being pulled in from earlier sets. So this was obviously I just can't remember off the top of my head, this would be from a set, and that set, I seem to remember, whatever it was, did have a cycle of beacons in it, which were obviously did certain things specific to the colour, their colour. So in this case, with the black one, the Beacon of Unrest, it's going to put target artifact or creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Shuffle Beacon of Unrest into its owner's library. So that means you get to use that Beacon of Unrest later, although you're not going to know because it's obviously in your library somewhere. Torrent of Souls is a hybrid black-red mana, so obviously at home in a red-black deck, black-red deck. And here again, return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. If black was spent to cast Torrent of Souls, creatures target player controls get +2/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. If red was spent to cast Torrent of Souls... Oh, sorry. That's difficult to read, actually. If that was spent, controls get +2. If red was spent to cast Torrent of Souls... Oh, I see. So yeah, it's saying, yeah, that I'm now, it's all right. Interesting way of wording this. So yeah, what it does is in front of how much it costs. So you can return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield if black was spent, and creature target player controls get +2/+0 and gain haste until end of turn if red was spent. But you get to do both if you spend both black and red on that. Inferno Trap, 3 and a red. So another cycle. I think that the traps, there was a couple of cycles of traps in the Zendikar block. I think there was some in Zendikar and also some in Worldwake, which had this sort of subtype of trap on them. Got Zombify, another way to return a target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. Makeshift Mannequin, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a mannequin counter on it. For as long as that creature has a mannequin counter on it, it has when this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. Infest gives all creatures -2/-2 until end of turn, so you're getting a sort of board sweeper for any creatures that have 2 toughness or less. Terminate. This will destroy a target creature and that it can't be regenerated. There's 2 of those. So obviously if you're going down the using this as a basis for doing some EDH stuff, then one of those would come out. Sign in Blood. Target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. 2 of those. Zombie Infestation. Discard 2 cards, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. So you're getting to put a zombie creature token and stick stuff in your graveyard. Now under normal circumstances, if you weren't playing like, you know, Graveyard Shenanigans, not such a good card, but the fact is, you know, you're going to be wanting to put certain cards into your graveyard. So in this case, discard is actually advantageous. Rakdos Signet, no surprise in here in the black-red deck. We're going to filter mana here. So for 1 colourless, we get to add black-red to our mana pool. And that costs 2 colourless to cast, but because it's reusable, it's artifact. It'll stay in play. 2 of those. Got Reanimate in the deck. Again, no surprise with this card. Single black. Put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You lose life equal to its converted mana cost. Again, another, you know, very, very black thing to do is, you know, one of the additional costs often of being a black player is that it will deplete you of your life. So with this deck, you know, there's 2 additional resources which you've got access to, which a lot of, you know, I wouldn't say conventional, but you know, straight magic, if you like, if there's such a word, might not utilise. One is your life as a resource, and the other is the graveyard as a resource. Artisan of Kozilek. So this was a card from, what would this be? This would be Rise of Eldrazi. 9 colourless for a 10/9. When you cast Artisan of Kozilek, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So we're going to see probably a lot of that where certain creatures have additional abilities. You know, we're getting 2-for-1s where the ability is very relevant to our graveyard based scheme. Sign of Darkness, 5 colourless, 3 black. Has trample on it, 6/6, rare. Whenever a Sign of Darkness deals combat damage to a player, you may put target creature card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. And it's got cycling for 3, so you'll see there's a few other cycling cards in here. So with cycling, you pay the cost, you discard the card, you draw a card. So it's just getting rid of cards that may not be of use to you, but at a cost. We've got a dragon in here, not surprisingly in black-red. It's a 5/5 for 6, black-red. Flying, whenever a creature dealt damage by a vampiric dragon, this turn is put into a graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on it, on vampiric dragon. Also, for 1 and a red, you get to deal 1 damage to a target creature, but it's not like a lot of so-called pingers out there, where you have to tap it. There's just a cost here, and yeah, so just another way of dealing 1 damage. Avatar of Woe is in the deck, 6 and 2 black. This has cropped up an awful lot in multiplayer product actually. The Avatar cycle goes, I think, back to Prophecy, and there was 1 in each colour in the Prophecy set. So this is a 6/5 for 6 and 2 black, creature avatar. If there are 10 or more creature cards total in all graveyards, Avatar of Woe costs 6 less to cast. And notice it says all graveyards, not just yours. So you're sticking stuff in your graveyard, but equally in the course of a game, other cards are going to end up in opponents' graveyards. That's going to help. Also has fear on it, so it can't be blocked except by artifact creatures and or black creatures. And also you can tap it to destroy a target creature, and that creature cannot be regenerated. And also, probably the most interesting inclusion in here is a legendary creature. In this case, it's Karvek the Merciless, so it's 5 black red, so it's actually in the colours relevant to this deck. It's a 5/4 and it has whenever an opponent casts a spell, Karvek the Merciless deals damage to target creature or player equal to that spell's converted mana cost. So yes, we have a legendary creature in black red, but you could argue this particular card is not synergistic with a graveyard based approach, although it has a pretty dramatic effect on your opponents. We got Extractor Demon, 4 and 2 black for a 5/5 flying. Whenever another creature leaves the battlefield, you may have target player put the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. And it's also got Unearth on it, so if this, not only if this is in the graveyard, you can get to unearth it, but if you've discarded it to the graveyard for some reason, the only downside with Unearth is when you return it for its Unearth cost, it's only in play for a relatively short period of time. So it does gain haste, but you have to exile it at the beginning of the next end step, or if it would leave the battlefield. So if the only thing you're going to do with this is unearth it, because you've actually discarded this to your graveyard, then what I'm getting at is you've got a limited time. You know, timing is really important, and timing is important in Magic anyway. But with these sort of decks, you have to really think about what stuff you want to just pure discard, so you can bring it back later, and how long it's going to be in play for. Twisted Abomination. So this has Regenerate on it. 5 and a black for 5/3. Also Swamp Cycling. So this idea of cycling, but specifically to swamps. And there's 2 of those. Shriekmaw has another card with Fear on it. 3/2 for 4 and a black. When it enters the battlefield, you destroy target non-artifact, non-black creature. That could be your own. Evoke 1 and a black. You may cast this spell for its evoke cost. If you do, it's sacrificed when it enters the battlefield. So you can evoke this. It'll end up straight away. You end up sacking it. It's in your graveyard, and then you can get it back by some other means if you wanted to. Corpse Connoisseur. Another one with an Into the Battlefield trigger on it. And for this one, you get to search your library for a creature card and put that card into your graveyard. If you do, shuffle your library. Another one with Unearth on it as well. So again, bearing in mind the things I've said about Unearth. And we've got Infectious Horror. So whenever Infectious Horror attacks, each opponent loses 2 life. So this becomes, a lot more powerful in a multiplayer environment. Avatar of Discord. So this is another avatar, but I don't believe this was part of a cycle. This, in fact, I think came from probably one of the original Ravnica sets. So one of the 3 sets from that block. It's in black red. I don't think it formed part of a cycle, but correct me if I'm wrong. But as far as I know, it didn't. It's 5/3 flying creature avatar. When Avatar of Discord enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you discard 2 cards. So another way of getting cards into your graveyard. Cemetery Reaper obviously interacts well with zombies. They get 1/1, 2 and a black, exile target creature card from the graveyard, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. So that's how you can get zombies into play if you don't have other zombies in here. And this is other zombies, so it doesn't pump itself. Urborg Siphon Mage. So what's this? 2 and a black, tap, discard a card. Each other player loses 2 life. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. So we've got life gain on here at the expense of your opponent's life. Black and tap, discard a card, add 3 black to your mana pool. Okay, and that's 2 and a black to cast Bog Witch. So we're generating 3 mana, but at a cost of 1 mana and a card. But because we're discarding a card and because this is a graveyard-based deck, that's not such a bad thing. Rakdos Guildmage, so we're in Rakdos colours, so not really surprising. And obviously being in Rakdos colours, this came out in 2010, so you might want to start looking through the Return to Ravnica block, looking for stuff in there basically that's going to be relevant. So for 3 and a black, you discard a card. Its abilities, target creature gets -2 until end of turn. And for 3 and a red, you put a 2/1 red goblin creature token with haste onto the battlefield, exile it at the beginning of its next end step. So it's a 2/2 for 2 black-red hybrid. Reassembling Skeleton. So this is interesting because with this, it's not a regenerator effect, which wouldn't be as advantageous. With this, which makes it very suitable to being, the graveyard, the whole graveyard thing, is the fact that for 1 and a black, you get to return Reassembling Skeleton from your graveyard into the battlefield tapped. So this could have ended up in the graveyard through discard, and you still get to cast it. It's also 1 and a black to cast regularly as well. That's a 1/1. So you just can keep coming back, actually. Dregscape Zombie, another one with Unearth on it, but again, I mentioned about the things with Unearth and what you have to bear in mind. 2 and a 1 for a 1 and a black. Festering Goblin is in here, so when this is put into a graveyard from the battlefield. So notice this triggers when it comes to the grave from the battlefield, not if it's discarded. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Rakdos Canarium, so this is going to give us some sort of red-black fixing. So enter the battlefield tap. When Rakdos Canarium enters the battlefield, return a land you control to its owner's hand. Tap, add black-red to your mana pool. We've got 2 of those actually. A couple of Barren Moors. So this is, you tap it for black. It does enter the battlefield tapped, but also has cycling on it. So for a cost of black, you can discard the card and draw a card. And then we just move on to our mana base. So we've got, not surprisingly, some mountains. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 those, and some swamps. Of those. Actually, this has got my favourite swamp artwork on it, actually. So that was a bit of a bonus there. So yeah, so then we have the deck. This was called Bring About the Undead Apocalypse. And as I've said, at the time, this was very much seen as a one way with the fact that there wasn't any formal Commander product. That maybe you could use it as a jumping point to start building EDH Commander decks. So it's rather a coincidence that there was one legendary creature in here, even though, like I said, it doesn't specifically synergize with the directly, I suppose, with your particular graveyard. Although by dealing damage to target creatures and hopefully destroying them, it's going to put stuff in their graveyard, which does then interact well with other cards like the Avatar of Woe and any other ones you might want to stick in here to better exploit the fact that you're going to have cards in your graveyard. Because there's there's lots of different ways you can take advantage of having a full graveyard. One is simply that you can effectively reanimate stuff from the graveyard, bring it back, and obviously put in cards that are relevant to that. And another way is to just have cards which I'd have things like its particular ability is is based or augmented by the number of cards or the number of certain types of cards in a graveyard. Anyway, so there we have it, the Bring About the Apocalypse Archenemy product. Thanks for watching.